Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. If you wanted to win a gold medal at the Olympics, you wouldn't think of hand washing, would you? Yet that's exactly what the British cycling team did at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. They hired a surgeon to teach the athletes to properly wash their hands. And this is to avoid illnesses during the competition. And they looked into every little thing, like even food preparation. They were extremely fastidious about it. They even brought their own mattresses, their own pillows, so that the athletes could sleep in a familiar posture every night. What does all of this have to do with coaching? It might seem totally weird, even slightly crazy, but these were just some of the methods that Sir Dave Brailsford, head of British cycling, used to turn his scrappy little bunch into world champions. Before Brailsford came along, the British cycling team had won just one gold medal. Now that was back in 1908. And after he took over, they won 7 out of 10 gold at the Beijing Olympics, then 7 out of 10 at the London Olympics, and they've dominated La Tour de France 2012, 2013, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. Surely Britain didn't sprout champions all of a sudden. Something else was in play, and that something else is simply the teacher or a coach. And there is a remarkable difference between just being someone who coaches others and one that coaches to get precise results. The coach who works with a specific goal in mind takes great performers and transforms them, making them completely unbeatable. And if you look at almost any great artist, performer, athlete, professional, it's easy to seduce yourself into believing in inborn talent. In almost every instance, you will find that it's the coach and their methods that take a client from a seemingly ordinary level to something quite stupendous. Without a coach, a person has to go through this grueling method of trying to figure out all the mistakes and then fix it themselves. When you look at the 10,000 hour principle, what you're seeing is someone who doesn't have an outstanding coach. A coach can not only reduce the learning curve, but can make learning fun and addictive. In this series, we'll take apart not just what makes for good coaching, but the elements of coaching. And let's start out with the first one, which is how do you define your niche as a coach? Around the time of the California gold rush, one man, Samuel Brannan, was known as the richest man in California. Contrary to what we may believe, Brannan didn't make his money panning for gold. He decided early on that he would never make much money in the gold mines, and so he was reputed to go down the streets of San Francisco shouting, "Gold! Gold! There's gold down the American River." So where did Brannan's riches come from? His fortunes arose from a strategic move. He owned the only store between San Francisco and the goldfields. He stocked his store with the picks, the shovels, and the pans. So for instance, he'd buy a pan for 20 cents and then sell it for $15. In scarcely 9 weeks, he had made over $36,000. In today's terms, that would be more than $1 million. And if you want to be precise, $1,080,077.47. In short, Brannan put himself in a position where it was hard or even impossible for any kind of failure to come about. When starting up as a coach, it's not easy to have such clear insight. In many cases, you're in transition yourself. You're often trying to find your own feet, your own space, your own voice. And you do know one thing though. You know that you can't be like everyone else, rushing off with their pans and shovels. You instinctively know that you've almost got to swing the other way and to find a niche. But how do you go about creating a niche? Let's start with luck, shall we? When I got to Auckland in 2000, I got thrust into coaching by accident twice. I wasn't into coaching at all. I was drawing cartoons in Photoshop. A client who'd come over watched in awe as I got rid of all the icons on the screen in Photoshop. So there was no toolbar, no color picker, not even a menu bar. "Where is everything?" he asked. And he was amazed, that's what he told me, at the speed of the method. There is no toolbar, there's nothing in front of me, and I'm just working almost magically with shortcuts. I explained to him, I said I was using shortcuts, but he was so impressed that he said, "Can you train my daughter?" And we set a fee, and it was $1,000. So I got $1,000 to train his daughter to learn Photoshop in about a week. It wasn't the entire Photoshop suite, of course. It was just a bit of information that she needed to get going. And this was my first accidental coaching session. How to use Photoshop faster than graphic designers. And that was my temporary slogan. In a week, his daughter went from never using Photoshop to literally teaching the graphic designers how to use shortcuts as well. With my newfound slogan, I managed to pick up one more client. Yes, another graphic designer. As a result, I was able to do my cartoons in my Superman time and then had this Clark Kent coaching operation on the side. But why was this type of coaching earning me a fair bit of money in a brand new country? I didn't have any testimonials, I had no referrals, I didn't even have a business card, and definitely no website. What I did have was a subset, or what you'd call a niche, which coincidentally takes us to the second coaching scenario. Around 2001, I decided I didn't want to draw cartoons for a living anymore, and I started up a marketing company. At first, I tried to solve every possible marketing problem, and as you probably imagine, I didn't get anywhere in a hurry. Then one day, by sheer fluke, I decided to create a presentation on just 7 elements. This presentation was called The Brain Audit, and once I was finished with the presentation, I was pushed into creating a book, which then sold online, and guess what buyers wanted next? They wanted me to coach them on the brain audit. I wish I knew what I was doing back then, but the reality is I didn't know much at all. I was desperately reading books, buying courses, and then finding myself spending anywhere between $1,500 to $8,000 for seminars and workshops, just so I could upskill myself. However, at the very same time, clients were happy to pay me as much as $150 an hour to see them through the brain audit, to help them somehow construct their pages, to do the problem solution, all of that stuff that you see in the brain audit. Now, if you put the Photoshop and the brain audit story together, you should easily see what's happening. It's the power of the subset that matters most to clients. Clients don't want to learn how to cook Indian food. They want to learn a subset, like vegetarian food for special occasions. So they're not looking at this big, broad topic, but they're looking for one small, tiny little thing. They're not looking to learn in design. They're specifically learning how to put an ebook together in about an hour. It's always the subset that they're looking for. That subset seems doable. That subset seems important to what they're doing at this moment. In almost every subset, we also find there are both a specific problem and a corresponding solution. But the moment you start moving out of that subset, there's a complete lack of clarity. Let's go back to Photoshop, shall we? What problem does it solve? How about marketing? What problems does that solve? And Indian food. You see what I mean? The problem with saying I'm a life coach or I'm an NLP coach or I'm a boxing coach, that's totally pointless. People can't make head or tail of what you're trying to say. But the moment you pick a subset, you automatically, almost automatically have a problem and a solution. And maybe that's where you ought to start. What problems do clients have in Photoshop? What problems do they have with guitar playing, watercolors, marketing, NLP? How can you reverse engineer that problem so that you end up with a solution? Then it won't matter whether you have a fancy card, a website, referrals. It doesn't matter what you do. What you have is a problem and a solution. And that's how you get started with a niche. When I did that week-long assignment teaching that girl how to do Photoshop, essentially I was solving a subset of the problem. I wasn't teaching her all of Photoshop. What I was teaching her was to be confident in Photoshop, having never used Photoshop before. When we teach people how to, say, create a sales page, that's exactly what's happening. We're taking a subset of the whole field of copywriting and we're looking at just the sales page. There's more to copywriting. There's, the pre-sale, the post-sale, the follow-ups, the autoresponders. Every one of them becomes a subset. And if you go racing around trying to solve the problems of copywriting or Photoshop or NLP or guitar playing, then it's very difficult for you as a coach to describe what you're doing. You don't have a niche. And definitely it's much harder for the client to figure out, why am I working with this person? So the first thing you've got to do is you have to get to that niche. And the niche is found with just a subset. In other words, you have to find a niche. And this takes us from the first part, which is, hey, we need a subset, to how are we going to find the subset? How do we know that we found the right niche? If you were asked to go to the supermarket to buy a packet of potato chips, would you make the right choice? There are only two answers here, aren't there? You could have picked the right one, or you could be wildly off the mark. After all, the supermarket has dozens and dozens of different brands, and there are so many variations: low fat, slow fat, crinkle fat, plain salted vinegar, paprika, whiskey, who knows what else they have. But the chance of getting it wrong far, far exceeds the probability of getting it right. And how do we know if we've got it wrong or right? It depends on who you're buying it for. Who are you buying the chips for? If Renuka sends me into the supermarket to get chips, I know that I can only get one brand, and that is called Proper Crisps. And it won't matter whether I get the paprika or the salted version, because they're both the right choices. When choosing a niche, it might seem like you're stuck in the chips aisle. It's like a nightmare. Wouldn't it be better if there were a way to make a correct choice from the very start? Let's find out if such a task is possible, or if we just have to bludgeon our way through many choices. The reality is that the answer lies somewhere in between. No matter what niche you pick, you can almost be certain that you're off the mark. The good news is that you're partially, not completely off the mark, which means that a piano coach or a life coach or a breathing coach is more or less going to be in the right box. Just more or less. They will still be in the broad spectrum of piano, life coaching, and breathing, just like the chips are in this broad range of chips. What makes a niche right isn't the broad spectrum that you choose, but instead the narrow niche that you choose to occupy. You might know the story of Coach Joseph Pilates. Pilates wasn't an exercise coach in his early years. He was born in Germany in 1883, and he had already dabbled in gymnastics and bodybuilding, so these were his younger years. Yet, in 1912, when he moved to England, he moved to professional boxing. He was a circus performer. He had this self-defense training system. Notice how versatile Pilates seems to be? Well, that's a problem with a lot of businesses. They have the capacity, or at least believe, that they can have a one-size-fits-all kind of coaching. And it's not like Pilates was destitute. He did a bit of this, a bit of that, and he got by. But then we get to 1925, and that's when Pilates finds his niche. Over the years and through World War I, he developed a system. And this was an integrated, comprehensive system of physical exercise. And he put control and OGY together to call it contrology, which is quite a difficult thing to say. So anyway, he stops appealing to everyone. He stops appealing to everyone who wants to get fit, and he sets up shop under the dance studio. Now, the dancers need to be fit at all times, plus they have to have flexibility, they have to have strength, they have to have stamina. And his focus was on reducing injuries. And to the outside world, it looks like he just got lucky. He just found this shop right under the dance studio, and now he has this profitable niche. Luck has its role to play, but when we examine the unlucky coaching businesses, there is an absolutely clear pattern. The businesses that struggle are those that stay incredibly generic. You ask the coach what she does, and she says, "I'm a writing coach." As you can tell, her statement told you nothing. But if you were to continue that conversation, continue that line of questioning, she might say, "I'm a writing coach that specializes in removing writer's block." Notice how the specialization got your attention. She's possibly good at teaching writers how to create structure, drama, flow, style, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's related to writing. But the moment she goes wide, she loses that power of the niche. All of us sit and wonder whether we found the right niche. But the reality is that any niche is the right niche. Pilates could have made a great life for himself as a boxing coach, a self-defense coach, a circus coach. But instead, he doesn't just choose dancers, but he chooses how he can reduce the injuries of dancers. All niches are already niches, and let me explain what I mean by that. The moment you put yourself into a category of being a writing coach, you've already put yourself in the box. You've already canceled out all the other things that you can't do or shouldn't do or won't do. But your audience still doesn't care because a client doesn't buy into a coach. Instead, a client buys into a specific problem, and that problem needs solving. We waste endless days, weeks, and months trying to find the right niche, when in reality, we're already in the right niche, but we haven't defined the problem that we're solving. But how do you know if the problem is the right problem? And there again, there is no such thing as the right problem. But there is such a thing as a recurring problem. Do dancers get injuries? Yes, they do. Did they get injuries when Pilates ran his dance studio? Yes, they did, and they still do. If you are a fitness coach today, all you need to specialize in is how you can make dancers have fewer injuries or get fewer injuries. You don't even have to reinvent the problem. It was done for you back in 1925 by Pilates. You think that writer's block is a recent problem? You think that snoring is a problem that showed up yesterday? Not one of these things are new, and all you have to do is look for the recurring problem. People have had these problems for centuries and will continue to have the same problems over and over and over and over again. So what do you do from here? Your first step is to find yourself a category, that box that you can sit in. So a box like that would be writing. The second step is to find yourself an audience. So say you say small business owners who want to write blogs. And the third and final step is to find the recurring problem. And one of the examples of the recurring problem is writer's block. And there you have it. You have a niche. And it's the right niche. It's there. It's always been there. It's yours for the asking. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Don't go away. In the next episode, we will look at some of the examples of recurring problems. And we will also continue down this coaching series, which will continue for 3 episodes. So what did we cover in this episode? You might see a coach as someone who helps you along, but that's not what a coach is. Coaching is easily put in a nutshell, and that is, what result are you getting? When you are clear about what result you're getting, you stop saying things like, I'm an NLP coach, I'm a writing coach, I'm a boxing coach, I'm a speech coach. No, you stop saying things like that. Because that kind of terminology, that kind of language, that's not result-oriented. That's just some kind of title that you're putting on yourself. But it's a good first step. It's a step where you go, there are all of these professions, there's all these things that I can do, circus performer, whiskey trainer, whatever, and now I'm going to get to a result. What kind of result can I get for the client? And that kind of sets your whole coaching in a nutshell, which is, what is the result that I'm getting? And that takes you almost directly into the niche, which was the second part of what we covered. And it's like, how do you know that you're in the right niche? And people spend so much time trying to figure this out. It's like, am I in the right place? But you are in the right place. Once you've gone and said, I'm a boxing coach, okay, that's the starting point. And then you say, okay, I can teach you to hit a really good left hook. I don't know anything about boxing, but I'm just making it up as I go. So it shows you how you go about the niche. So a left hook, right? And that's your niche. Has the niche existed before? Of course it has. Someone has always had a left hook problem. When we teach courses, for instance, we don't just teach writing, we teach subsets. We teach the first 50 words course. That is, how do you start up your article? Now, think about the article. It has so many elements. It has headlines, it has the whole text, it has the next step. It has all of these subsets. A single article can probably be carved into 8 different spaces. I'm just making this up as well. But we say, okay, a subset is the first 50 words. I'm going to be a first 50 words coach. And then later on we say, okay, I'm going to be your headlines coach. Now, you might recognize these as being courses that we do on psychotactics, but it shows you how there is a subset. It shows you that you can have an article writing course, but you can also have subsets. Even in the brain audit, you have the same thing, which is you have, I'm going to teach you about testimonials. So yes, there is the brain audit, which is already a subset of marketing, but testimonials itself is a product. And if you taught a person how to do that, now you're a testimonials coach. If you taught someone how to get to their uniqueness, which is again a subset of the brain audit, then now you're a uniqueness coach. And getting to this subset means that you are defining the result. And when you define the result, it's very clear for you and for the client. And with that, we'll come to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in psychotactics land. It's almost 6:25 a.m. here in psychotactics land, and we've been having some trouble with our computers. Renuka's computer failed last week, and, well, we couldn't get it started again. It was too costly to fix it, so she has a new computer. And while I was recording this podcast, the computer rebooted. Luckily, the program which I use, which is Hindenburg, it kind of saved 99% of everything I'd done, so I didn't have to redo all of it again, which would have been a real problem this morning. Anyway, that's the kind of problems that we're having in psychotactics land. Recurring problems, you could say, and someone has solved them or will solve them eventually. But anyway, we're not very far away from 2019. And yes, the years keep flying. I would suggest that you get into 5000 BC because it's a place where you have extreme kindness and extreme helpfulness. And this information on coaching, for instance, we're just going to cover 3 of the topics. Quite a lot of information, almost something that you could put in a small book. But even so, this series on coaching continues. There are series on uniqueness. There are series on article writing. There are a whole bunch of series. And yes, we all look for information. This is pretty precise information, quite different from what you get out there, but you already know that if you've got into one of Psychotactics products. And what's different, however, is the fact that you can ask me questions. Now, we'll be away for a short while. So we'll be away for the first 15 or 20 days of January. That gives you a good chance to get in, to read stuff, to get yourself sorted out for 2019. So I would really recommend that you get into 5000 BC in 2019. Get started now. There's also the Chaos Planning book. One of the things that people really struggle with is how to manage everything in their day. And for this, we have a book. It's called Chaos Planning. So go to the website and have a look at Chaos Planning. It's psychotactics.com/chaos. If you are looking to create an info product, then on 25th of January, the info product course, that's the home study, self-study, that will be available. But you can go and get info goodies at psychotactics.com/info goodies. And this is a big list that I've already gone through. 5000 BC, Chaos Planning, info goodies. There's one more, and that is the cartoons. I don't know if you're aware, but we've had a new website for a while, and we've also put in something called a Friday cartoon. So you can go to psychotactics.com/Frytoon. That's FRITOON. That's the first 3 letters of Friday. So there you go. A whole bunch of stuff, and we're almost at the end of the year. It's been wonderful having you along for this trip the whole year. I want to thank all of you who have written in, helping us with this podcast, with the website, with all the things, and we'll be back. Bye for now. Still listening? When I started out with my coaching career, I called it consulting, of course. It sounds so much better. But I started talking to Quicken, which is QuickBooks, and then to a bread company called Pita Bread. Now it's called Danny's Pita Bread. But one of the mistakes that I made was I just went in there, just like I told you, just, as a coach, as a consultant. And there was never any result. I'd just go there, and then we'd sit there, and then we'd have this hour-long meeting, 2-hour-long meeting. We'd shift one font or one word from left to right. We'd spend all of this time, and they'd pay me for it. And the reason why I was so drained was because I never set that result thing in place, and they never knew what kind of result they were getting. So it was always extremely weird, and it got us through the early years, as in they'd take the advice, they'd pay us for the consulting, and it would pay for the bills quite handsomely. But the point is that we really started to take off once we got into that niche. And that happened online. I'm not suggesting that you should go online. I'm suggesting that whether it's online or offline, and I think both of them are critical, you should definitely define your result. The moment we defined our result, which was we are going to help you get to uniqueness, or we are going to help you craft these first 50 words, that's when we started getting clients signing up much faster, paying higher prices, and being happier. They were happier, we are happier. We were happier, we are happier. So that's it from Psychotactics Land, and see you in 5000 BC. Bye for now.